Well, good morning. We'll go ahead and get started. And I want to open this morning by offering my sincere condolences to the family, friends, and fellow officers of fallen Iowa State Patrolman Sergeant Jim Smith, who was tragically killed in the line of duty Friday night. This, of course, was a devastating loss, and the thoughts and prayers of a grateful state are with everyone who knew and loved him, including his brothers and sisters of the Iowa State Patrol. I read something in Sergeant Smith's obituary that has stayed with me the past couple of days. Jim will be greatly missed by everyone who knew him. He was an upholder of justice, a loving husband and father, a comedian, a humble man of God, and a superhero. To this day, nobody has seen Batman and Jim in the same room. To remember someone so fondly that their memory allows you to smile, even at a time of such grief, is a testament to the impact his life had on so many people. Kevin and I are deeply sorry for your loss, and we pray for your comfort during this very difficult time. Yesterday, the FDA and the CDC made a sudden and surprising announcement recommending the administration of the J&J vaccine be paused after 6 cases of an extremely rare but severe blood clotting condition were reported among women between the ages of 18 and 48 within 6 to 13 days after receiving the vaccine. And none of those cases occurred in Iowa. This was a surprising setback at a time when our vaccine efforts are showing much progress, and because states weren't informed in advance of the announcement, we were left to develop contingency plans in the moment for vaccine clinics scheduled yesterday and throughout the week. We're working to allocate additional vaccine where it's needed and ask for Iowans' patience as we finalize these details. So even though Johnson & Johnson doses are on hold right now, we were already planning for a minimal supply over the next few weeks due to the slowdown in manufacturing that had been anticipated. So the immediate impact of this decision on our vaccine supply should be manageable. While news of a serious reaction to the J&J vaccine is concerning, it's important that we don't jump to conclusions prematurely before more details are known. Nearly 7 million doses of J&J vaccine have been administered in the United States, and at this time, we're aware of only 6 cases resulting in the rare blood clots. Currently, the odds of this reaction happening are literally 1 in 1 million. But because of the serious nature of the reaction, it's important that we have the information necessary to fully understand the situation, including why it occurred, how to identify the symptoms, and how to prevent it. By temporarily pausing further use of the J&J vaccine now, the FDA and the CDC can inform the medical community about the condition so doctors are prepared to diagnose and treat it, and meet with the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices today to update recommendations for the vaccine's use. A vote is expected before their meeting ends later this afternoon, so hopefully we will know more very soon. Putting even one vaccine on hold is disappointing, especially as we're fast approaching 2 million doses being given and administered in Iowa. But ensuring a safe vaccination process, one that everyone can be confident in, will continue to be a top priority. Today, I am so pleased to have with us Dr. Pat Winokur, who is the Executive Dean of the University of Iowa Carver College of Medicine, and she is joining us to provide her medical expertise on this issue. Dr. Winokur joined me on March 3rd to talk about the safety and efficacy of the J&J vaccine just before I was vaccinated with it during that press conference. So thank you, Dr. Winokur, for joining us today to provide additional context regarding the latest development and to really help Iowans understand what it means for them, especially those who are newly eligible and making plans to be vaccinated. Dr. Winokur?
So thank you, Governor Reynolds. I think you heard a lot of the information that I will repeat a little bit just to reiterate some of the important points. Yesterday, the CDC and FDA put a pause on the rollout of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. They did this because they had received reports of 6 cases of a rare blood clotting disorder that's also associated with low platelet counts. This is a disease that many of us have not seen, and they are taking the appropriate caution to review these cases. They have convened an expert panel. The Advisory Committee of Immunization Practices will be bringing in consultants on this rare disorder. They will be evaluating not only the 6 cases that we have seen in the United States, but some of you may also know that in the European Union, there have been similar cases reported after the AstraZeneca vaccine. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine and AstraZeneca vaccines are both based on adenovirus platforms. They will be reviewing whether there is something that they can see in these adenovirus platforms that might be a reason for this. They will be evaluating how commonly this disorder occurs in people who have not gotten any COVID-19 vaccines. Based on their evaluation, they will be giving us some important recommendations on how to proceed, and we will be watching those recommendations and responding appropriately. So I think the fact that we did pause is important. It's what we want the system to do. Many of you probably are concerned that we rolled these vaccines out too quickly. I can assure you, we did not skip any steps in the creations of these vaccines. Remember, each of these vaccines was tested in 30 to 40,000 people. That's tenfold higher than we typically include in our drug trials. Every drug that we create has rare side effects. We don't see those side effects until we start distributing the vaccine or drug into the general public, and millions of people are dosed. That's what we're seeing here, a 1 in a million type of event. So our system is working correctly. We're identifying these, and we're pausing appropriately to reconsider the safety and efficacy of this drug. Now remember, we still have a pandemic. There's still 500 to 1,000 people dying a day in the United States from COVID-19. Keep that in mind. So many of you are going to be considering whether you should continue to pursue a COVID-19 vaccine. The answer is yes. We still have COVID-19 circulating in the United States. We have variants that are being transmitted more quickly in the United States. Remember, too, we have 2 other approved vaccines. We have the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. These are completely different vaccine platforms, messenger RNA platforms. Hundreds of millions of doses of Pfizer and Moderna have been used now throughout the world, and we have not seen the same side effect in those vaccines. Also, remember that we have many other drugs that have rare side effects that we have still chosen to use because they have more benefit than risk. Even flu vaccines have rare side effects that occur 1 time in a million, yet we know 45,000 people die from influenza a year. So it's a risk that that's worth it to protect the general public health. For those of you who have gotten the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in the past 3 weeks, there are things that you should be looking for. These cases that we had in the United States were all in women. They were between the ages of 18 and 48. In Europe, the cases were predominantly women as well, also similar age frame. They occurred between 1 and 3 weeks after they got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, or in the European Union, AstraZeneca vaccine. The side effects were very different. They had severe headaches, severe abdominal pain, acute shortness of breath. Remember, all of the COVID-19 vaccines we have common side effects. In the first 1 to 2 days after a vaccine Many people have a mild headache. Many people have just general body aches or fever. This is different. It's occurring later, and the symptoms are more severe. If you are experiencing any of these severe symptoms and you got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine in the past 3 weeks, you should contact your primary care provider. There are tests that they can do looking for an unusual antibody that attacks some of the granules and platelets. If your physician needs some help, we have consultants that can help them order the right tests. The treatment for this is intravenous immunoglobulin, a little different than a standard blood clot. Some of the people are put on steroids as well. Again, if anyone is identified with this disorder, we have experts that can help walk through how to treat this disorder. And I'm going to stop right there. Remember, we still have a pandemic. We still have some great vaccines, and we'll be learning more after ACIP reviews these cases today and helps us understand what we should do going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Winokur. I greatly appreciate your time and your expertise in this area and really walking Iowans through what they should be looking for. As I mentioned earlier, I received the J&J vaccine myself 6 weeks ago. That's hard to believe. It's been 6 weeks ago. But during the evening of my vaccination and the following day, I, like the doctor said, experienced some mild side effects that are common with any of the COVID-19 vaccines, including a dull headache and general fatigue. But I was still able to report to work the next day, and within 24 hours, I was back to feeling 100%. So I'm glad that I did have the opportunity to have the J&J vaccine. I would do it again. Vaccination is the best defense against the virus, and as you've heard, the reward far outweighs the risk. While the White House reported yesterday on its weekly call with governors, the temporarily pausing the use of the vaccine should not impact supply going forward. Fortunately, additional doses of Pfizer and Moderna will be available for nationwide distribution next week, and we've been receiving an ample supply of both here in Iowa. These vaccines are a 2-shot series, and it's recommended that you receive both doses to get benefits of full vaccination. Following your first dose, you can expect your second Pfizer 3 weeks later and 4 weeks later for the Moderna vaccine. As I do every week, I want to strongly encourage all eligible Iowans to be vaccinated as soon as you're able and to not put it off. It's really the most important thing that we can do to help get life back to normal and keep yourself and your fellow Iowans healthy. Even before yesterday's announcements, Iowans have had many questions about COVID-19 vaccine and whether it's right for them. So that has continued to be part of our process in educating the public. In order to ensure that Iowans have access to the information that they need, the Iowa Department of Public Health, along with partners from Iowa State and the University of Iowa, have developed a series of virtual information sessions. They're available to any Iowan who wants to learn more about the vaccine. And here to share more about this opportunity is Director Garcia. Kelly?
Thank you, Governor. We continue to make great progress on getting Iowans vaccinated so that life can start to look a little bit more like normal. And I know that the recent Easter holiday was the first time in a year for many Iowans to be able to see and embrace their loved ones. And this is the type of connection that is essential to our well-being. We must keep up the momentum. We've moved from it being a really scarce supply to which required a ton of patience. And now we're moving into a space where we really do need to focus on talking with these Iowans who may be on the fence about taking the vaccines or who now have questions, which is completely normal. This means shifting our focus from large clinics to a more targeted strategy with an equity lens. If you are a community leader working on initiatives in your community, I encourage you to work closely with your local public health department, and know that we at the state level are here to support these efforts. We're also putting together a toolkit to assist in these efforts at the local level. And to speak to Iowans who may be hesitant, the Department of Public Health, along with Iowa State University Extension and Outreach, and the University of Iowa are collaborating to host information sessions about the COVID-19 vaccines. The sessions will provide a virtual forum for Iowans to learn about the safety and efficacy of COVID-19 vaccines and to have an opportunity to ask questions, which is great, with a team of medical experts. Dr. Padati will participate in each of the sessions, and she will be joined by Dr. Winokur. And Dr. Alejandro Comellas will participate on April 24th, and this is a unique session because it will be offered in Spanish to Spanish-speaking Iowans, and an interpreter will also be present. Each 1-hour session will feature an overview from medical experts, followed by a moderated question and answer segment to encourage Iowans to have a dialogue, an active dialogue, and be able to ask their questions to a team of experts. This is an opportunity that we know people will have additional questions because of the J&J pause, and that's okay. It's a great time, actually, to enter this forum. We want to ensure all Iowans have the information they need to feel safe and confident in their decision to be vaccinated. There is no fee or registration is required. The sessions are open to all. Participants can join a session by visiting www.iowacovidinfo.org. The vaccines will remain the most powerful tool to turn the page on this pandemic. So thank you for doing your part, and thank you to all of our partners in this monumental effort.
Thank you, Kelly. This is a great opportunity for anyone to get the information they need to feel confident and assured in their decision to get vaccinated. And I want to thank you too, Dr. Whitaker, for being a part of this important initiative. So in closing today, it's important that we don't lose sight of the progress that we are making. 1.94 million doses of vaccine have now been administered in Iowa, and 33% of Iowans are now fully vaccinated. Among specific age groups, 89% of Iowans aged 65 and older have had at least one dose of vaccine. The rate for those in their 50s is 52%. For those in their 40s, it's 47% that have received at least one dose. For those in their 30s, it's 40% of Iowans that have received at least one dose. And Iowans in their 20s, 29% have had at least one dose. More than 10,000 appointments have been scheduled through 211 Iowa for individuals with technology and language barriers that had previously prevented them from getting an appointment on their own. So we continue to utilize that tremendous resource. And more pharmacies are now partnering with 211 Iowa to ensure appointments are available across the state, so as well as Hy-Vee and CPES and pharmacies, which they represent a whole host of pharmacies, especially in rural communities. Soon, appointments at some Walgreens locations in Polk and Lynn County will also be available as an option for scheduling through 211. And finally, I'm really excited about this. The first 24-hour vaccine clinic will be held this weekend in Cedar Rapids. And we know, it's hard for some of those that are working odd hours to get in and get the vaccine and some of the time frames that they're being offered at the clinic. So the Lynn County Public Health Department is hosting the clinic at Alliant Energy Convention Center, and it is from 9 a.m. Saturday morning until 9 a.m. Sunday. Appointments are required, and they can be scheduled by calling 319-892-6097, or you can visit the county's website and also schedule an appointment. Individuals will receive a first dose of the Pfizer vaccine this weekend, and the second dose will be at a follow-up clinic on May 8th. So, we say this all the time. Iowans can do anything when we do it together, even overcome a pandemic. And I just want to say thank you to every Iowan for continuing to do their part to keep us moving ahead in our COVID-19 recovery. And with that, I'll go ahead and open it up for questions.
Governor, with the halt on the use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, how does that affect the state's strategy and recommendations for reaching hard-to-reach populations specifically?
Well, it is a setback, and I said that, and it was a surprising one. We weren't anticipating that. Hopefully, by this afternoon, we'll have a better understanding of how we move forward with that. But that's why efforts like Director Garcia just talked about to continue to work with communities and continue to work with leaders within these communities. We've had Salud come on. We're working with Embark. We're working with local public health. We're working with Iowa State Extension, the University of Iowa, to really get out there and continue to provide information about the vaccines and how important it is to move forward. And so in the interim, we'll supplement what was being used as J&J with Pfizer and Moderna and continue our education efforts and outreach that we knew we were going to have to do at some point anyway. And so we'll continue to work on that, and hopefully we'll be able to bring J&J back into the equation sooner rather than later. But we want to make sure that they've answered those questions and everybody feels confident moving forward. And I think they will. So, but that's, today is important, and that's why we have the experts looking at it, and then they'll make the recommendations on how we move forward with that. It was a smaller dose this week and last. So while Director Garcia was just informing us, they'll go ahead and send those to Iowa, but they'll be on hold until we get the recommendation on how we move forward with them. But it was quite a bit less than we had seen last week. 1,800 is was our allotment for next week, regardless of the news that we heard yesterday, and this was really from the manufacturing issue, that the amount was reduced significantly to states across the country.
To follow up, ma'am, should vaccine administrators be reaching out to, say, Iowans who are homeless or college students who may be leaving campus to be giving them the 2-shot vaccine now, or should they be waiting for Johnson & Johnson to come
We've
back?
got clinics. We'll hopefully have I was at University of Iowa this Saturday. They were working with their spring sports team. They are doing a clinic, I think, this week and next. Iowa State, the same thing. We've worked with many of our community colleges that are kind of in the queue to be vaccinating students and staff, as well as our private colleges. So that's in the works and being administered. It has, some of them have done it last week and maybe the week before, and then we're continuing to schedule more moving forward, understanding that we have kind of a limited time frame to move forward with that.
Governor, for the younger man standing behind you there,
Yeah.
he would seem to be in the demographic of those who have been less willing to get vaccinated, and maybe the lieutenant governor is the one to kind of jump in on this, but how is that going to change, and is this going to be even worsened with the J&J pause here to make people even more hesitant?
Well, that's a concern. Of course it is, and that's why we, would have been nice to have a little bit more advance notice about how we really rolled this out. But I can let the lieutenant governor know, but he was waiting until his age bracket was eligible. His age bracket is now eligible, and so you won't be surprised to know that he's going to be getting his vaccine. We're just trying to kind of work on logistics and where that's at. But you see, that's one of the reasons that we're in colleges and universities, because with the athletic program, showing them that they're stepping up. I'll tell you what the students told me when I was there, the athletes anyway. I said, thanks for getting the vaccine. I appreciate this. I'd ask you to help encourage, other classmates to get in there and do the same thing. And they said, hey, it beats getting that test 3 times a week where we do the PCR test. So they were very excited, actually, about getting the vaccine and knowing that they would be, protected from COVID-19. And honestly, ultimately, they want things to get back to normal too. They want to be in the classroom. They want those stadiums full of fans and supporters. And so, that's kind of the mindset I think that we have. And as we work with, like the lieutenant governor and just different individuals across the state and try to highlight, them getting a vaccine and how and encourage their kind of network to do the same thing. I think that's how we continue to move through that.
Like Carroll today has 1,000, they're doing 1,000 appointments tomorrow, and at last check right before you started here, they still had like 800 open.
Yeah.
Are you going to have to reallocate, or,
Yeah.
I mean, they may have a ton of it that is going to go bad.
Well, so we will if we have to. We talked about that this morning in the briefing. They were going to check back and see where they were at. We were going to see if we could do some additional calling, see if, some of our other opportunities to channel people there could help with fill some of those, some of that allocation. And so if not, then we'll have to reallocate, because we just can't be sitting on it. We're still going to do everything we can to meet the need. And in our larger cities, there's still the need is still there. And so we're going to continue as some of our other counties reach, where they're not getting the vaccine that they've been allocated, administered. And some of them have said, don't send this week. We're kind of waiting to see what the numbers look like. They're doing walk-in clinics. They're being really creative in how they can continue to do the outreach. But if we've got some excess doses, we're trying to get those to areas that are still, the need is outweighing the allocation.
Governor, do you know about how many doses of Johnson & Johnson the state currently has or had at the time yesterday when the pause was initiated? And second to that, do you know what the impact was around the state with some planned clinics that were going to be using Johnson & Johnson yesterday and today?
So that's what I was saying. So this week, the April 12th, the allocation of J&J to the state was about 5,400. So from the state allocation, that last week it was 45,800. So that's the difference. But they had already told us that was going to be the case based on what had happened at the manufacturing site. And then the retail pharmacy program also gets an allotment, and I'm not sure what their numbers are. But we've been able to reallocate and supply Pfizer and Moderna where the J&J vaccines were supposed to go. So they've increased the allocation by a little bit nationwide for both Moderna and Pfizer to account for some of that shortfall. So, it had been a little bit different story if it would have been 45,800 that had been scheduled that we were looking to readjust. So it was a smaller number that we had to account for. Kay, I think you had a question.
Just a couple of quick questions. Now's the time when legislators are trying to make final decisions. Number one, do you think the legislature should vote to freeze tuition, or is that a decision you believe the Board of Regents should make? And number two, should the state provide money for a sports soccer stadium for a professional team?
Yeah, well, we'll let both of those work through the legislature. I think the regents serve a important, that's their role, but again, we'll let it work through the legislative process on both of those issues. And then did you ask something else? Was it just those two, Kay? Yeah, okay. It's that time of year where things are getting bounced back and forth, and so we'll see where it goes as it works its way through the process.
One question, if I may, Governor.
Sure.
So I see that, I think in Michigan, there seems to be a surge in cases among children, and I think that's nationally a trend, perhaps not as bad as it is in Michigan, but I also see in Iowa, I think we've had in the past week or so, maybe 3,000 or 4,000 cases additional to what we've already had. Do you see that as a problem here? Are we seeing a surge among children, and what's the level of concern with that? And I think this is tied to the new variant, it sounds like.
So we'll continue to monitor it like we normally do. The effects on children are less than it is on our older population, and we've known that from the beginning, but we'll continue to watch, especially as the new variant. We're seeing cases of that in Iowa and across the country, so we'll continue to monitor that. But we know, we're watching hospitalizations. They're remaining stable. Our long-term care facilities are remaining stable, so we continue to monitor that. And then we're just going to continue to encourage people to get the vaccine, because we know that that's ultimately what we need to do to really turn a corner and tend to move forward with this. And there continues to be studies from vaccine usage on children as well. So all of that stuff will continue, and we'll continue to monitor like we have since the beginning of COVID-19.
Governor, you talked about Director Garcia talked about the sessions that are coming up to help people who are on the fence about this. Back during the height of the pandemic, you did a public relations campaign on mask wearing and other social mitigation strategies that could help. Have you considered anything like that regarding vaccines, commercials, PSAs, whatever it might be?
Yeah, and there's a lot of funding that's available through the CARES funding that's already come into the state, and the new funding that's being proposed too. So again, we're waiting on some of the guidance. And then there's just funding outside of the American Recovery Program that goes to the Department of Human Services and to various other agencies that we could maybe take a look at utilizing that. I think what we found most effective, though, is to really get into these communities, find the community leaders, work with the network that's already established. A local public health has been a great asset in helping set that up, and that's where people feel, I think, the most comfortable, is when they're able to identify with somebody that they trust and know that have gotten the vaccine and have not had any side effects. And so while that can be a piece of it, we're still going to do the outreach and really reach into communities and some of these micro-targeting clinics that we're setting up, and just really figuring out which populations still need some additional outreach, and then just how do we get to them too. Like the 24/7 clinic is great. I mean, I think that is a great example that I would like to see some of the other areas of the state implement. So kudos to them for making that available to parents that are working some really hard hours so that they have the opportunity to get the vaccine as well. Thank you.
Goodbye.